Hi, my name's Sean Connors and welcome back to the Outsiders channel, and I'm going to be talking about, it's a reply video to someone who set up, and I don't know who set it up actually, I really don't know where this thread started from, but it was all about your 5 favourite equivalent RPG style films, what would they be? And I've seen quite a few videos go out about it. I think it's a fantastic chain, and whoever started that off, apologies, I don't know who started it off. I'm just going to adjust that slightly because there's a bit of glare. It's probably actually quite a lot of glare, but it's quite atmospheric, which is good. It's very obviously individual when you talk about film choices. I noticed what everybody's done so far is very much stick to fantasy films and stuff like that. So I thought, as we're the outsiders, I think we can afford to be very different, to be honest, and give you 5 films and justify the reasons why I'm picking those 5 films. And of course, again, just to be awkward, I'm not actually following the rules. So let's, now that we've clarified our stance, let's try and explain our favourite 5. So starting at number 5, I'm just going to say his name rather than actually pick a film, Clint Eastwood. Because there are so many of these classic westerns here is what I'm referring to. Fantastic films. Films that I remember very fondly as I grew up. But they were very relevant for roleplay because he had developed this character, this anti-hero character that he portrays so well throughout his films. And it's that classic, and it's very difficult to do. I'm going to try and adjust it because that's horrible. Because women want to be with him and men want to be him, and it's just such a fantastic thing. And he doesn't have to say a lot. It comes through the body language, the mannerisms. If I had to try and explain to people that sometimes least said is actually more powerful, he really has that in spades in those films. There are so many: High Plains Drifter, The Good, the Bad, the Ugly. There are so many great Clint Eastwood films where he was attached to those films. It is just fantastic. So he's up there for me. He's just one of those people. I just think it's a masterclass in creating the anti-hero. And you know what? Really, realistically, a lot of players actually really are anti-heroes in so many ways. So it's a classic one to really touch on. So I thought I'd mention that here. Not really picking any particular film because obviously we're not going to follow the format. At number 4, I'm going to put in a film which is incredibly dear to my heart. And again, not a fantasy film, but again, a beautiful piece. It's fantastic for DMs as equally as it is for players. And that is Once Upon a Time in America. Now that film, for me, you can tell from the director, it's the director's life work went into that film. And it just oozes quality throughout. I mean, it is over 3 hours long. It's a sensational film, all about, the 5 boys growing up in pretty much a very difficult slum, and how they forged, as criminals really, how they forged a better life for themselves. And yet, you shouldn't like them, but you sort of begrudgingly do. And it's a fantastic piece with phenomenal story all the way throughout, and that is a masterclass in character building, disagreements that they have, how they come together, and love, hate, the whole lot's in there. It's an absolute spectrum of fantastic ways to set things up. It's beautiful. The plot twist is sensational. So one of my favourites, to be perfectly honest with you. So that's got to be in the top 5 there. And these are all films that I'm picking them out because they are masterclasses in terms of what I would say role playing, character builds, all that sort of stuff. It's beautifully done. And number 3, I'm very apt for number 3. I'm going to pick the first 3 Star Wars films because they're all very good, but I like the first 3 because, when I was growing up and a young lad, those films came out in the 70s and early 80s, and, I was enthralled by them. And looking back, they are still an absolute masterclass in teamwork. When you look at the relationship between Han Solo, Luke, and Princess Leia, those 3 characters it's just fantastic. And if you have that camaraderie around the table, you got a stellar game going on, because you can imagine the sort of scenes. There's so many great one-liners in it as well. It's an absolute pièce de résistance. I'm always judging if players are bantering that way, it's a win. You know you've succeeded. So they have to be up there, and they are a masterclass in films. And actually, as well, what's interesting when you talk about films, that's why it's such a good subject matter. This, the films doesn't matter on the genre; they're still relevant in role playing, whether it be fantasy or sci-fi or modern or anything. You know, there's so many ways to actually utilise those films in so many different ways. It don't have to be one thing or another. They're just fantastic pieces. So, at number 2, I'm going to pick The Matrix. Again, purely for when I went to see The Matrix, and I'm picking only the first one here. Wasn't such a fan of the other parts. I didn't know anything about the story, so from a role-playing point of view, not knowing anything about it, just going along blind, not having any clue about this film, it was sensational. It's an absolute eye-opener. It taught me so much about exactly what I was talking about in my previous videos, about how you can have the world as you think you know it, and underneath you can have something completely different going on, and those two can go hand in hand, that yin and yang. It's fantastic. That's an awesome film. And that's got, I like to think my games are as deep as that. I really do. That is an absolute cracking piece. And it's great for players as well, because it gets them in the mood for the type of game that's going to come. So The Matrix has to be up there in one of the films that I would say you must have watched or must watch. And then finally we get to number 1. And number 1 for me is just a personal thing, and it's a very personal thing. And this particular actor who's the main star of this film, I think is highly underrated. For me personally, I think he's fantastic, and that's Guy Pearce. And the film is Memento. And if you've never seen Memento, I don't think you've ever lived. I think it's up there in the same vein as Shawshank Redemption in terms of story. But why I picked Memento out for this particular occasion for role playing is because of the way the story is set up, because of the character that Guy Pearce plays, and the interaction that goes on the screen. And this film is the only film I've ever seen that works in reverse, and equally plays forward as well as it does in reverse. Just a remarkable film when you start breaking it down. I won't spoil it too much for you, but what I will tell you is this particular gentleman that Guy Pearce plays has been involved in his wife has been murdered. That's all you know really at the start. And he was obviously seriously injured. He suffered a head injury, quite a serious one, and he's lost his short-term memory. So when he meets people, very quickly he forgets them. So he has to do very obscure things to remember them. So he has tattoos, keeps photographs, strange albums, writes things on the walls, massive maps, the whole lot. It's a fantastic thing. I mean, it really is. It's a pièce de résistance in terms of story, in terms of character, and it really explains about how to play flaws so elegantly that if your players can grasp a flaw as deep and difficult as one like that, you imagine what sort of game you would have on your hands. I think it's a masterclass. Anyway, I've been Sean Connors. Those were my 5 role-playing films for role players. I hope you liked it, and thank you for watching. Until the next time, take care of yourselves and happy gaming. Bye bye.